felt about the state of safety in India today. Now, to shine a spotlight on all of this research, we're going to be joined by Dr. Kanupriya. She's from the P-Value Analytics team. And in just a few minutes, to bring us deeper, more incisive insight into these numbers, we will have a guest joining us too. And we'll share with you who that very special guest is in just a second. But first, let's bring up all of the numbers just to dive straight in to the broader picture. Question number one, and this is perhaps the foundational question to the rest of our research. How safe do you feel in your city? Take a look at those numbers on the screen in front of you. 82% of women saying that they feel safe. So, painting a very, very positive picture seemingly. 6% of women saying they feel unsafe, and a neutral is at 12%. But again, I want to draw your attention to that 12%. Let's take you now to the next set of numbers. We're going to go through a few sets of numbers and then we'll go over to the experts for their comments. So, question number two. How safe do you feel in your city during the day? Here, interestingly, we want to point out that number, 82%, consistent with the previous data set. Now, when it comes to moderately safe, 14% of women said that in the daytime we feel moderately safe, and at unsafe there were 4%. Again, this number, safe at 82%, same as the earlier number. But let's go on to the next set of data. The picture gets a little more complex here. How safe do you feel in your city during the night time? How safe do women across 20 states, 20 cities in 20 states feel during the night time? This is where that number drops. We were earlier in the 80s, but that number plummets to 48%. 48% of women feel safe in the nighttime in their cities. 29% feel moderately safe, and a whole 23% feel unsafe. That's almost 1 in every 4 have said that they feel unsafe. Now, before we go over to the experts, we have one more interesting piece of information, piece of data that we wanted to shine a light on. We also asked everyone gathered what they thought the safest cities were. So each person had to answer how safe they felt their city was. What are the cities that did the best? The 3 cities that did the best in rankings, and this is not in order of how safe they were or how safely they were ranked by women. You have Ahmedabad, Indore, and Mumbai. Again, not in order. These cities are ranked, as we're telling you, in alphabetic order: Ahmedabad, Indore, and Mumbai. These are the cities that consistently, when women were asked, how safe do you feel in your city, these are the cities that got the best scores. Now, we told you a little earlier that we have an expert from P-Value Analytics with us this morning to help us analyze the numbers. Dr. Kanupriya is with us to shine a light on these numbers. Let's go over to her to understand a little bit more. Dr. Kanupriya, if we could first just bring up that first data set with you. We'll get into the other numbers in just a second. But more than 80% of women saying that they do feel safe in their cities. That's a surprising number. Were you surprised by how positive the response was when you were conducting this survey? I just want to also tell our audiences, each of these surveys was conducted by a woman, so it was women talking to other women. Dr. Kanupriya, floor over to you. How did you feel when you saw these numbers?
Okay. So Toya, basically these findings just establish a baseline understanding that women who've been a part of the survey in general do not feel or do not live in a space of fear or anxiety constantly. However, when I say this, when we look at the data, since it's a general perception, it will vary considerably when it is looked at from different contextual lenses like the domains, the demographics, and the cities. Also, if you look at the second number which is there, neutral and unsafe, it again puts up a picture that there is a number which is also reporting that they feel unsafe, and there is also a number which is reporting that they feel moderately safe in their surroundings. This is no outright concern to their safety or security, but still that means there are certain apprehensions amongst this group. Coming to the point that you just told the viewers, yes, the survey was actually a very robust a sample size of 8,000 respondents, 8,000 women across 20 cities who, yes, you also rightly mentioned that the survey was designed by women, the survey was conducted by women telecallers, the survey was answered by women across socio-economic groups, and also the survey was analyzed by women. This was done using a structured questionnaire approach with 90 plus questions, which again tells us that there was an in-depth of questions that were covered across various domains like neighborhood safety, workplace safety, education institution safety, transport safety, and the likes.
Okay, Dr. Kanupriya, you've explained now the methodology, the manner in which this was conducted, and you've told us how you feel about those initial numbers. I want to ask you then, that dip that we're seeing in the night time take place, and it's quite a dip. It's almost by half, 48%, from 80 to 48%. How did you read that?
So yes, that dip which you see, the nighttime dip, is a very significant dip. The perception significantly drops after sunset, which again, brings us to the point that definitely there is something that maybe at an overall level needs to be pondered, that what needs to be done to improve the safety perception of women at an overall level, especially during the night times.
Okay, so 8,000 women, I just want to repeat for our audiences, 8,000 women in 20 states across 20 cities. Very quickly, we'll ask you before we move on to the next set of numbers, just explain to our audiences those 20 cities, how were they selected across the country?
So for those 20 cities, we determined a sample of 400 respondents for each of these cities. Now, these 400 respondents were statistically significant at 95% confidence, and that's how we have confidence in our data findings that we bring to you.
Okay. All right, okay, we're going to move on now, and I just want to tell our audiences very quickly, we've just presented the national picture to our audiences, but now it's important to zoom in closer. We haven't told everyone who's listening yet this, but we are actually going to be looking at different community formats now. First, we're going to be taking a look at the neighborhood, but then we're also going to be taking a look at the workplace. What does the workplace feel like for a woman? What do education centers, schools and colleges, and what does public transport, crucially, feel like for women? But first, let's zoom in a little, let's get down to neighborhoods. So, when we asked people how safe they feel in their neighborhoods, how did they answer? How did women across the country answer? Number one, 82%. Again, this is a huge number, very, very high. 82% of women saying they felt safe. Unsafe at 4%. Just 4% said that their neighborhoods feel unsafe for them, and neutral coming in, as you can see, at 14%. Now, there are a few sets of numbers we want to bring you here, so we're going to move along. Does your neighborhood have woman-friendly safety infrastructure? So what do we mean when we say woman-friendly safety infrastructure? We're talking about women's restrooms, especially for any staff that works in your neighborhood. We're talking about CCTV cameras. We're talking about security infrastructure, lighting. Is there adequate lighting across the entire neighborhood? We mean street lamps, for example. How did women answer? 56%, so half, a little more than half, said there is significant infrastructure for us in our neighborhoods. A moderate number, 22% said, that there is a moderate amount of safety infrastructure for us in our neighborhoods, and 22%, this isn't a great number at all, said that there is a minimal amount of security. Okay, let's move on to the next part. Have enough efforts been taken to ensure that women's safety in your neighborhood is there? So, is effort happening? Are we seeing effort from, for example, the community leadership in the neighborhood? Are women being asked in the neighborhood if enough is being done? 67% saying yes. You can see this number on your screens right now. No coming in from 19%, and neutral over there at 14%. Now, we asked women after that, has your neighborhood safety improved in the past 2 years? So if you just take a timeline of thinking back, closing your eyes, thinking back to what your neighborhood felt like 2 years ago and what it feels like today, do you feel like the situation has improved in just your community? 43%. Again, a little less than half said, yes, the situation has improved by a lot. At moderately, you can see on your screens, 36% of women said, yes, moderately in the last 2 years, the situation has improved. And 21% said, only a little. Then we asked them, how safe do you feel walking alone in your neighborhood at night? Remember, for any person living in their neighborhood, being able to walk, the walkability of a neighborhood is very, very important. For women, can you go to your neighbor's house? Can you go to the neighbor kirana store? Can you go to the park? And how safe do you feel doing any of those activities at 11 in the night, 1 in the night? 54% said so. A little more than 1 in every 2 said they feel highly safe doing this. Neutral came in, as you can see, at 31%, and a 15% chunk there said that they actually feel highly unsafe while doing this. Okay, that's the zoomed in numbers. Let's go over very quickly to Dr. Kanupriya, who's with us. We also will just go over very quickly to the expert who's just joined us this morning. Good morning, ma'am. Let me just introduce you to our audiences, though they possibly already recognize you. Joining us today to break this survey down for us is Dr. Kiran Bedi. She's a former IPS officer. She's also the former Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. Dr. Bedi, if we could come over to you first just to understand, and Dr. Kanupriya, we'll just come to you in a second to ask you more. We were sharing with our audiences the neighborhood numbers that are coming in. When we were earlier taking a look at the city numbers, and now when we're taking a look at the neighborhood numbers, in both cases we're noticing that even though women are saying that they do feel safe, so more than 80% in both the city case and the neighborhood case say they do feel safe, that number is still drastically dropping when it comes to the nighttime. Dr. Bedi, you're someone who's been involved over the last few decades in making public spaces safer for women. So how do you feel about these numbers, the fact that that drop is still very evident?
Since you've talked about neighborhood, there was and probably is still around, but selectively, called neighborhood watch groups. This was a good police practice started by the then police commissioner, Mr. Ajay Karan. He started this neighborhood watch groups, and what we had done was every RWA, every neighborhood created its own watch groups. Now, in watch groups included young men and women. And they kept the watch on the development of the neighborhood. Now imagine if this was a practice in every neighborhood, properly practiced, the percentage of security will go up. You see, the police is not in every neighborhood.
Right.
Police is there patrolling the streets, responding to your calls, night patrolling, day patrolling, investigating, but something where it's called the community must self-police. And RWA, the Resident Welfare Associations, is exactly for this purpose as well. Not only about civic amenities, but also maintaining their own security, which comes through neighborhood watch groups. So if every neighborhood also inducts its young and women in it, that means you really get to know which house is a disturbed house, which house is disturbing at night, who is going and coming. And these are all because now colonies have become very gated. You have almost security in every gate. And if that security is also better oriented and inspired and watched and trained, and also in coordination with the beat system of the local police station, you will see the security enhancing, because the watch and the camera watch. What about the camera analysis? So while we have the cameras, we don't have the camera watch and camera analysis. So two things: if the security is trained in camera watch, camera analysis, night watchmen at the gates, neighborhood schemes, you will see this percentage go up considerably. And of course, report to the police anything suspicious moving around, so that the police can immediately check and prevent. I think it will immediately notch up your percentage of people feeling more secure.
Wow, Dr. Bedi, could we ask you a slightly complex follow-up question to this that will make this slightly murky? There's often the problem that, watch groups or neighborhoods overlooking their neighbors could devolve into moral policing. How do we ensure that doesn't happen in such situations?
It's not overlooking. It's not overlooking, it's staying alert. It's not overlooking. You're not peeping into the rooms. You are keeping our streets safe. What about the streets of the neighborhood? You're not entering homes. You're keeping a watch on the roads, the streets, and the watchmen who are doing a better job. You already have watchmen. So why can't they be also time to time trained by the police? Link them with the beat system. They should report if there's anything suspicious coming out at night, particularly at night. The kind of vehicles, who's coming in, the noise pollution. I think all this needs to be coordinated. When you have a coordinated policing with the community and the local police, you have better results. But when you have disjointed and the person who is out to make nuisance or create a scene sees that there's nobody watching. Right. Camera will not be analyzed and therefore they can get away. So the feeling of not getting away must remain in those people who are out to create a nuisance or create security threats to the others.
Okay. And Dr. Bedi, could we ask you lastly in this section, when you were overlooking communities like this, how much of a problem was the maintenance of facilities? So sometimes you'll have communities that have CCTV cameras, but the cameras may not actually be active or they may not be angled in the right direction. Was that a persistent problem or was it actually not, and do we exaggerate that issue?
That is exactly the job of the RWAs. The resident welfare associations must take charge of their securities. And I'm also a member of a resident, I'm also living in a colony which has an RWA. It is gated, it has security men, and we make sure that they do patrol night and day, and there's somebody supervising them. So it's not, and then there's a camera watch at all. And if there's anything suspicious, it is reported. So every RWA is also mandated to not only maintain its civic services, but also its security services. And that is why you have an improvement, because you can't have beat policemen in every resident colony, but you have an RWA in every colony because of its own needs. So I think if RWA's community must take responsibility for its overall maintenance. So I think security is critical and it is being done. And that is why you see the feeling of security going up. But community must take charge. Like, for instance, hiring unverified domestic help, unverified drivers. Now, drivers, inform them that this is the person we are hiring, this is his background, you may like to verify. You never know who you are hiring because it's an unknown person. So these little precautions. Similarly, senior citizen living in the house close by, but is him or herself by themselves. RWA must keep them on watch, keep them visited. The youth keeps them visited. You see that? So our little things will make all the difference in every colony. So neighborhood watch group, if formed well and then nurtured well, and also brings in young leadership. It also brings a responsibility to the youth. So youth start feeling more responsible for their own area. After all, the colony belongs to them more than the senior citizens there. So I think it will go a long way.
Yeah, that's a super positive way to make young people feel as if this is theirs, it's theirs to take care of. Okay, let's move on very quickly to another very important piece. If you're watching this show early in the morning, like we are creating this show for you, that means that you're possibly headed off to office. This next section is about public transport. We wanted to talk a little bit about the methods in which women travel to work and how they feel about it. Remember, more than 80%, according to one recent survey of women, use public transport to their work back and fro in India. That's a very high statistic, and we only bring it to you, spotlight it to you to show that public transport is used by the common woman every single day. But how woman-friendly do women feel public transport is? Take a look at those numbers on your screen. Less than half feel like public transport is women-friendly. That's 44%. At neutral, you have 29%. Those are the women who didn't feel like it was safe or highly unsafe. And then, as you can see on your screens, 27% saying that they felt it was highly unsafe. Let's move over very quickly now to the next data set. How safe do you feel traveling alone on public transport during the daytime first? Take a look. 70% of women saying they feel very safe traveling in any kind of public transportation, whether that is a bus, as you can see, whether that is a metro in a city like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata. 25% saying they felt neutrally about this, and 5% saying unsafe. Then we asked them, and this is that important other side to this question. How safe do you feel traveling alone on public transport? The same question, but this time at night time. Just want to remind you, earlier when we asked this at day, 70 plus said they felt safe. That number, again, we're seeing this pattern again and again, that number plummeting. 36% of women saying they feel safe in the night time. Neutral at 33% and 31%, as you can see, saying they feel highly unsafe. Then we asked them this question. Is the public transportation in your city, does it feel safer than using a ride-hailing app? So what we mean when we say a ride-hailing app is obviously an Uber and Ola. These apps, do you feel like public transport is safer than that? 49% say they agree. 38% feel neutral about this question and 13% disagree. Okay, those are the transport numbers. Let's go over very quickly once again to the experts who are joining us to provide us with insight on this. We'll go over to Dr. Kanupriya first to understand a little bit about this question. Dr. Kanupriya, I just want to come to you with that last question first. Just explain to our audiences the thinking there. Some could argue that ride-hailing apps feel safer because you're alone in a ride-hailing app. But some could argue that public infrastructure feels safer because you're surrounded by people. So tell us a little bit about the thought behind this question and help us read deeper into those numbers.
Okay. So again, the perspective of having this question here was the ongoing debate and discussion that is there around which modes of transportation are safer for women and which are not. And again, if you can see at the numbers, there is again a neutral mixed response that's coming in, which suggests that 49%, like again the majority are disagreeing with this, and they 51% would actually in a way say that public transportations would actually be much more safer than the ride-hailing apps. So again, the why we had this particular because we need to dig in deeper and understand that when we talk about public safety, public transportation, then we cannot completely ignore the other modes of transport, like the hailing apps which people are using versus the other public transport like bus and trains that normally people travel through.
And are far more affordable in comparison.
Exactly.
Okay, let's just go over to Dr. Kiran Bedi right now to also get her expertise on this answer. Dr. Bedi, we were talking about this a little earlier. We're seeing that pattern again. Nighttime, the numbers falling. In this situation, when we're looking at transport, where do you feel as a country, I mean, there's so many different parameters, but how do you feel we as a country can improve?
Use greater technology. I think we are now, the buses also have cameras. Public transport also has cameras. The key is analysis. I think we all have cameras, but not many get back to save and analyze. You have an analytics expert here, you can ask her. The analysis is missing. If there's a regular analysis, do you remember one day there was a great story from Tihar jail when the particular gangster, there was a murder inside the prison, and this did come on the camera, but nobody watched it. Nobody analyzed it. And it was a preventable one. So no point having a camera, public camera, if you're not going to watch it regularly and analyze it and review it and also save the footage. So I think technology is an answer, because technology as eyes are eyes which are never getting tired. Human eyes do get tired, but the technology doesn't get tired. And it is 24/7. So today buses, public transport today has cameras. And in fact, the best of the police detection is coming thanks to technology, because of face recognition. Now you can even recognize faces if they are on past record. So camera technology is important. But wherever, we've seen most of the crimes have happened, where the bus is less occupied, public is thinly occupied, or probably the woman is the only one or only one or two as passengers. I think that should be avoidable to the extent possible. Try not to be the only one. You see, most of the Nirbhaya cases, etc., if you remember, she was the only one. So I think that's where that gives the space to the person who are probably getting tempted or getting evil in their own mind. So I think that's important, is that when the woman rides a bus at night particularly, and she feels she's the only one, I think that's a time she has to be very, very alert, because that's not safe, not necessarily safe. So I think the timing. See, during the day there is a crowd, so she doesn't feel unsafe. But during the night, the safety percentage is now unsafety percentage is higher. That's the reason. So I think she also needs to be alert and careful, and not put herself into a provocative situation while cameras work. But I must also say that public transport also must understand your survey and analyze why. Why do the women feel unsafe during the later hours of the evening? Why? I think that why is important. You have to go, probably you can also consider going beyond the why. You got a percentage, let's now explore why. That why is the root cause of the problem, and if the why is further analyzed and corrected, which would then take the safety forward. We must now go to the analysis of the root causes of women feeling unsafe in these places. The why will give you the solutions and provide better security.
Dr. Bedi, thank you for that insight. Let's go back to Dr. Kanupriya. You talked about the importance of looking deeper in the numbers. Let's do that with Dr. Kanupriya. Dr. Kanupriya, our audiences, we've highlighted 2 sets of data for them. There was actually a lot more in terms of deeper research in this area. What insight did that data provide you with?
Interestingly, just like Dr. Kiran just mentioned, CCTVs, and it is something that should be an integral part of the society as a whole, and women have actually spontaneously mentioned in our surveys when we interviewed them that they do feel that the lighting can improve in their vicinity. The CCTV cameras are either, they are there but non-functional,
right,
or they need to be put at certain places, which, will automatically give women that confidence. So this will be a very good infrastructural development, which will, when we see maybe at a later stage when we do our next rounds of our survey,
right, you're going to be expanding.
We will be expanding this. So that will be very interesting to see if that's some improvements are done in these areas to bring in an inclusive environment for women. We might actually see that nighttime safety perception might also improve. So the entire aim of an objective of the study is to suggest the policy makers maybe to come up with areas and identify areas where we need to have certain infrastructure in place so that an inclusive environment is conducive for the women.
Okay, Dr. Kanupriya, thank you for highlighting
Let me add something very interesting.
Yes, please, go ahead, Dr.
When a woman is in a bus, particularly in the evening, late hours, and she feels insecure a little, or there's no harm. If she's sitting in an Ola or other car, Uber or taxi or a three-wheeler, or in a bus, and she feels, let her call up her relative saying, I am here, this is the number of the TSR, or this is the bus route I am on, this is for your information. That will alert the driver, because that will become traceable. Right. So she can use the phone she has, inform the near and dear ones or the friend, even if it's faking.
Absolutely.
Even if it's faking. Saying, I'm on bus route number, yaar, ये यहाँ से यहाँ जा रहा है और ये उसकी ड्राइवर की पीछे से फोटो है. So no harm. That raises the fear of getting traced, and that will be preventive. So let her use the very good technology weapon she has in her own hands. Even if the bus doesn't have it, you have the camera. You can even video record it. You can even video record the bus from behind and say, I'm in this. मैं अकेली हूँ, लेकिन मैं यहाँ ठीक महसूस कर रही हूँ, लेकिन मैं आपको बता रही हूँ मैं इस रूट पे हूँ. I'm on this route and this is the time of the bus and this is how it's looking. You will see it works as prevention. Three-wheeler, taxi, or otherwise, even on the road. So no harm getting yourself documented on your iPhone or your phone which you have. So use that technology.
Okay, Dr. Bedi, we're not letting you go, and Dr. Kanupriya, stay with us. We're heading into a quick break. On the other side, we continue to bring you these numbers. We're heading deeper into this research. We've looked already at transport, we've looked at neighborhoods. But next, where you're heading to right after this, your workplace, your education space, we take a look in just a few minutes. Do stay with us.
MDH का किचन
Засади рятувальників наразі ліквідовують наслідки. Медики, поліція, всі оперативні служби на місцях ліквідовуємо, допомагаємо. Намагаємось максимально оперативно ліквідувати усі пожежі. Уся інформація буде згодом щодо наслідків, щодо постраждалих. Ми працюємо.
Четыре 10 перемещались.
У меня аж дом задрожал и упали вещи. И я боялся и из-под дивана упал. И испугался, под диван залез и сидел, пока все это не перестанется. Я орал на весь дом. Папа меня успокоил, но я все равно той ночью не мог заснуть, целую ночь сидел. И что-то еще все равно стреляло. Я боялся, спрятался под диваном, пытался заснуть. И еще был у меня братик, он тоже испугался, и он тоже плакал. И я не мог ничего сделать, и я просто быстро пытался заснуть. И сейчас мы сидим без света, и у нас все электрическое, мы не можем покушать. У нас все и мой брат младший, он тоже не может покушать. И еще мама уехала на войну, и папа. Папа мне помог, чтобы я не боялся.
Мы просто 6 можем, сколько? 4? 4 на забор. Ира, надо попросить у кого-то тачку.
Да, главное, нет света и газа нет еще, добавок ко всему. У нас же отопление, ну, частный дом, котел стоит, автономное. Газа нет с ночи. Плита не работает, света нет. Уезжать пока таких планов нет. Во-первых, это связано с возрастом. Нам уже под 80 лет, мне и жене. Ну, а во-вторых, ехать-то некуда. Будем приспосабливаться. Конечно, если уже так, если каждый вечер будет такая бомбежка, то придется, может быть, куда-то убегать.
Welcome back. This is the SheShakti Suraksha survey. All of the research we're bringing you is brought to you by P-Value Analytics. Let's take you deeper into the survey. We were talking before the break about transport, about neighborhoods. Now let's go to where you're probably headed after this. Education and work spaces. How safe do women feel in each of these? First, let's go over to education spaces. So we asked women across the country. Remember, this is a sample size of around 8,000 women across 20 states, 20 cities. How safe do you feel in your educational institute? 87% said they feel safe, 11% said neutral, and 2% highly unsafe. So that's a very, very high number that are saying we do feel safe in our educational institutes. Then we asked them, will action be taken if you report safety concerns? So if something's happened to you and you want to go over to a higher authority and say something's happened, do you think that action will follow that complaint? 78% were very, very confident that it would. 17%, as you can see on your screens, were neutral about it. And 5% were not confident that any action would be taken right after everything took place. Let's go over to Dr. Kiran Bedi. She remains with us to provide her expertise on this entire story. Let's just go over to her to understand more. Dr. Bedi, high numbers coming in from people who have faith in educational institutes. And we'll just come to you in a second to ask you about that. But before that, if we could ask you, because we were talking about public transport earlier, and there the numbers were not as pretty as they are in educational institutes. Do you link this question with Indian civic sense? Over the last few decades, how high have you found Indian civic sense to be? So if we see something taking place next to us with a stranger, how likely are we to intervene if it's harassment of some kind?
I think as far as public safety, public transportation is concerned, or public safety is concerned, it's linked with the time of the day.
Nighttime.
It's time of the day, yeah. Whereas in education institutions, you're not there.
Likely, right.
You're done. You're back home by afternoon and during broad daylight. Whereas in public transport, you're vulnerable in the wee hours of the morning or at night. And it's sometimes isolated roads, not well lit and vulnerable. So I think that's the reason for vulnerability is the public space and the time of the day. That basically means well lit roads, well patrolled roads. Even well-patrolled roads, presence of the police matters a lot at that time. Night watchmen, if they are around, even if they're civilians or the civil defense or the home guards, if they are also oriented to watch. You see, you have police presence, you have private security present also. You have civil defense, you have home guards. There is a mass security presence today on the roads because of the security build-up. Whether it's private security or it's policing. So I think the private security must also feel responsible on what's happening on the road around them. And not feel, my responsibility is only for this office or my responsibility is only for this home. No, if they also get co-opted mentally, then you will see increase of eyes and ears on the ground.
Right.
Eyes, ears and feet. Feet are there, but is the eyes, the ears and the mind also there? If you co-opt them, then I think you will see a greater increase in the later hours of the night also.
Okay. Dr. Bedi, you've made this point and you were making it earlier too with Neighborhood Watch, the importance of making us all feel like we are responsible. Dr. Bedi, thank you for joining us today. Now, we're just going to take our audiences to the two other experts we have joining us here on the show to provide us with context. We're joined by Rita Kapoor. She's the director of Gyanshri. And we're also, remember, joined by Dr. Seema Tiwari. She's an expert who's joining us from P-Value Analytics to provide us with deeper insight into this information. Rita ma'am, I'm coming over to you right now first because we're obviously talking about educational institutions. The numbers are very positive. Women seem confident that in educational institutions, young college-going girls, they are safe. But I do want to ask you, Ms. Kapoor, we do hear still of the stray incident, but these are incidents highlighted by national media, wherein you have, incidents of abuse sometimes, harassment sometimes taking place with younger children in particular, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and, sometimes parents only come to know much, much later. What can be put in place in terms of infrastructure when you're talking about children that young?
I think this is a problem which is still persisting despite the fact that so much has happened and so much has been done by the government and the policies have been put in place. The schools are doing their best, the cameras, the technology, everything put together. There are measures being taken. In fact, there are, the child protection against sexual harassment policies are there, the law is there, and most of good schools, I would say most of the schools, they are implementing this also. But I think one point where we falter probably is what Mrs. Bedi mentioned, that analysis of technology sometimes doesn't happen, We just feel that, okay, the cameras are there, they'll take care. The camera will not take care of anything unless you chase it, follow it, or you, get into action, see what is happening or what is likely to happen. So these are the things where we falter. Otherwise, sporadic incidents do happen. They've been happening in the past also. To my mind, schools are very alert. A lot has happened and a lot is being done. More and more schools are getting aware of, or they're becoming sensitive about this issue. And small children are definitely being taken care of. But as I said, despite everything, the problem happens because of not analyzing things.
All right, that's beautiful insight. And as we were saying a little earlier to our audiences, the numbers when it comes to schools are high, broadly. And so let's take everyone who's watching right now to the next space, workplaces. So we're all right now at work. How safe do women feel in their workplaces? We asked women across, as we've told you a little earlier, 20 cities in 20 states, how safe they felt when they went to work every day. How did they feel with the policies that were there around their co-workers? 92%, so this is a higher number than educational institutions, felt safe when they were at their workplaces. Neutral 5% and unsafe 3%. Then we asked them, is enough being done for women's safety at their workplace? Again, 86%, this is again a big number, smaller than the previous number. 86% saying they agreed, 9% saying they felt neutrally, 5% disagreeing. Then we asked them, do you think enough is being done for women's safety at your workplace? Do you think your workplace cares, is putting in place actions? 86% you can see, 87% you can see saying they believed that their workplace was doing enough. And let's go very quickly to the data you can see on your screens. How effective is the implementation of POSH at your workplace? 87% saying highly effective. Prevention of sexual harassment is the POSH policies. They've been put in place over the last few years only. 87% saying they actually felt it was highly, highly effective. All right, that's very, very positive. And let's go over to Dr. Seema to understand a little bit more. Dr. Seema, hugely positive numbers here. When it comes to how safe Indian women feel in the workplace, not only is that huge, but it also speaks highly to everything that's been put in place in the last few years. It's fascinating. Tell our audiences first, how were you defining workplace when you were conducting this survey? So, for example, if one was a domestic worker, did where they went to do their domestic work also count as a workplace? Were we sticking exclusively to corporate workplaces? Just bring us that context.
Okay, so the context of POSH is relevant to the workplaces where the employers have the employees which is more than 10 in numbers. So when we are talking about a domestic worker who is going to somebody's place to work, that posh is not relevant there. However, it is relevant at the places where it is an organized sector and the number of employees is more than 10. So it was asked from those women who were working in such workplaces that how that do they have the posh policies at their workplaces, and you will be surprised to know that nearly 50% of the women, they did not even know that posh even exists. They were coming in the category of either they do not know or they do not have it. And there is seemingly a possibility that those who said that they do not know, they might have the posh policies existing. However, there is a lacunae of communication on the part of employers which needs to be bridged. And again, coming to the posh policies effectiveness, there is a strong confidence, and 87% of women have mentioned that the posh policies are effective at the workplaces, and that is the reason they have shown a very strong confidence at the workplaces being safe. Yeah.
Okay, I want to come to Ms. Rita to ask her then. Ma'am, a school is both a workplace and an educational institution.
Yes.
And it's complicated in that manner. I want to ask you, it's a space that's predominantly there for women, right? Unfortunately or fortunately, in most educational institutions, most teachers are women if you just look at the data. If you look at schools in particular, that fact is particularly pointed. In colleges, that drops slightly. Most people working in schools are women. I do want to understand from you, what proactive steps are taken in a space like that? Is it fair to assume such spaces are naturally safer because there are more women? Or in your experience, have you found differently?
No, I think you very rightly said these places are naturally safe because it's predominantly the children and the teachers are there. So protection of children is prime in our mind when we talk about education. Unless a child feels very happy and safe coming to school, there's no education that can really happen. So when while we are protecting the space for the children, it becomes automatically very safe for the teachers also. Although teachers are responsible for the safekeeping and the well-being and the safety of the children, but on the other hand, you said that it's predominantly the teachers are the employers there. There is a reason for that. I mean, there are various reasons for teachers being females there because all over, in the past few years, teaching profession was considered to be very convenient and safe for women also, not from the safety that we are talking about, but safe in the sense that it's convenient to go look after the family also, you look after the children also,
right.
And yet you can work, spend time meaningfully and earn something also. Somewhere down the line, some people will take up profession as a career and do very well, and we have seen many people these days doing very well. So you're right that these places are very safe, and increasingly an effort is being made by law, by practices that we have in the school. Every year after year at the time of orientation, we talk about how safe the place is.
Okay.
In terms of infrastructure, in terms of policies that we have, how toilets are going to be monitored, how some spaces in the school which could be hidden corners or something like that,
right.
The cameras are being put there. But I would always go by this, that despite doing all this, there are incidents that happen. So the gap is that somewhere down the line we are not able to analyze or probably implement what is expected to be done.
Maybe this is that same problem we were talking about. Infrastructure exists, but manning that infrastructure.
That sometimes happens. Sometimes you become so overconfident of things that look, it's not going to happen.
Right.
It's the last thing on your mind that happens.
Let me just take a quick question to Dr. Seema. Dr. Seema, we've put out these numbers in front of our audiences. We're not done yet, but tell our audiences how we're going to go deeper with this research. P-Value is planning to broaden out this research. In each area, ask deeper questions. What is the goal there? What's the vision?
Okay, so our goal is to have a data-driven research that finally leads to an index that will help the vision of fostering the Viksit Bharat, 2047 goal. And for that, we want to actually empower the policy makers with the actionable insights, and also we want to give the pointers to the corporates to innovate, to invest, and to come up with the social impact initiatives that can foster the environment of women empowerment in the long term.
This has given us initial pointers into that, and that's where I want to ask you, what would those deeper questions look like? How do we go a level deeper? If we understand where you want to use this information, but how do we do that?
Okay, so we are at a stage, this is the first year and this is the beginning, and we actually plan to take it as an annual exercise. We want to scale it up, and at the moment it was conducted in 20 states and with the 20 cities. We want to have it across the entire Bharat, and we want to scale it up to the level that we are able to assess not only the urban context but also the rural context. We want to take the insights from this particular study, and that will help us to go to highlight the pointers which will be indicating factors for us to explore more at a qualitative level. So for example, right now this is a quantitative study, and the kind of harassment aspects we are coming with and the kind of pointers we are getting, these really are very interesting, and they can be formulated into actions only
Actionable policies.
Exactly, actionable policies.
Dr. Seema, thank you for highlighting that. Ms. Rita, thank you for staying with us. We're going to head into a quick break. On the other side, we continue taking a look. We're going to be actually taking a look at a particularly important data set, the past. In the last year, what have Indian women experienced? Do stay with us.
सर आप बहुत लकी
Засади рятувальників наразі ліквідовують наслідки. Медики, поліція, всі оперативні служби на місцях. Ліквідовуємо, допомагаємо. Намагаємось максимально оперативно ліквідувати усі пожежі. Уся інформація буде згодом щодо наслідків, щодо постраждалих. Ми працюємо.
Четыре 10 перемещались.
У меня аж дом задрожал и упали вещи. И я боялся и из-под дивана упал. И испугался, под диван залез и сидел, пока все это не перестанется. Я орал на весь дом. Папа меня успокоил, но я все равно той ночью не мог заснуть, целую ночь сидел. И что-то еще все равно стреляло. Я боялся, спрятался под диваном, пытался заснуть. И еще был у меня братик, он тоже испугался, и он тоже плакал. И я не мог... и я не мог ничего сделать, и я просто быстро пытался заснуть. И сейчас мы сидим без света, и у нас все электрическое, мы не можем покушать. У нас все и мой брат младший, он тоже не может покушать. И еще мама уехала на войну, и папа. Папа мне помог, чтобы я не боялся.
Мы просто 6 можем, сколько? 4? 4 на забор. Ира, надо попросить у кого-то тачку.
Да, главное, нет света и газа нет еще, добавок ко всему. Она же отоплена.
Welcome back to News18's SheShakti Suraksha survey. We have been talking to women across the entire country to understand their experiences in India, whether it's at work, whether it's traveling to work, whether it's in their neighborhoods. Now let's move on to a particularly important section. We asked women, have you experienced any form of harassment in a public space in the past 1 year? Take a look. 93% of women responding and saying they had not. But 7% of women, and that number, though it looks small, is so important, have said that yes, they have. What about the kind of harassment that they faced in public spaces? We asked this question just to that 7% who said that yes, they had experienced harassment in the last 1 year. And take a look. 60% said verbal harassment. 25% said that it was psychological harassment. 17% said that they had experienced physical harassment. 12% said economic, and 3% said sexual. So this is of that 7% who said that yes, in the last 1 year, they had seen sexual harassment. Now, we're not going to go over to the experts for this last data set. We wanted these numbers to stay with you. By day, it seems, and this is our takeaway of the entire survey, that women in India feel safer than ever before, whether it's at work, college, or in their own cities. But as night falls, it seems again and again that fear is creeping in. Walking alone, taking a cab, boarding a bus, these are still not activities where Indian women are safe or they feel safe. And it's seemingly where the real battle begins. Safety cannot have a time slot. It cannot be a privilege only for some. It cannot be a statistic we accept as good enough. This was the SheShakti Suraksha survey, and it makes one thing clear. India has made huge progress. But this International Women's Day, we need to remember that the job is far from done. The message is simple. Every woman, wherever she is, deserves to feel safe 24/7, everywhere. It's not just a promise we make, it's a responsibility that we each need to act on. Thank you for watching.
Засад рятувальників наразі ліквідовують наслідки. Медики, поліція, всі оперативні служби на місцях. Ліквідовуємо, допомагаємо. Намагаємось максимально оперативно ліквідувати усі пожежі. Уся інформація буде згодом щодо наслідків, щодо постраждалих. Ми працюємо.
$4.10 перемещаться.
У меня аж дом задрожал и упали вещи. И я боялся и под диван упал. И испугался, под диван залез и сидел, пока все это не перестанется. Я орал на весь дом. Папа меня успокоил, но я все равно той ночью не мог заснуть, целую ночь сидел. И что-то еще все равно стреляло. Я боялся, спрятался под диваном, пытался заснуть. И еще был у меня братик, он тоже испугался, и он тоже плакал. И я не мог ничего сделать, и я просто быстро пытался заснуть. И сейчас мы сидим без света, и у нас все электрическое, мы не можем покушать. У нас все и мой брат младший, он тоже не может покушать. И еще мама уехала на войну, и папа. Папа мне помог, чтобы я не боялся. Знаю как.
Good morning viewers, hello and welcome to the Morning News Show where we bring you the latest headlines and insightful stories to kickstart your day. I'm Kanupriya Sharma and you are watching CNN News 18. First up on top of this bulletin, we're tracking some massive developments coming in from the US Supreme Court, where the US Supreme Court has now denied the Habur Rana's emergency stay application, moving him closer to the extradition to India for his role in the 2008 Mumbai attacks. His attorney now appeals to the Chief Justice Roberts. These are the latest inputs that we're tracking from the ground, where in a massive development, the US Supreme Court has now denied the Habur Rana's emergency stay application, paving the way for his extradition to India to face trial for his alleged role in 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. Now remember viewers, we will try and understand what are the implications of this stance of the US Supreme Court, but US Supreme Court's denial of the Habur Rana's emergency stay application brings India one step definitely closer to extraditing the accused mastermind behind the devastating 2008 Mumbai attacks. Rana's attorney has now filed an appeal to Chief Justice Roberts in last-ditch effort to prevent